Hi everyone, welcome to the Inner Reset talk show. My name is Semal Luthra. Through the Inner Reset, I want to start using the name that I was given. It's a spiritual name called Bodh Mastani. This is a talk show about bold choices, deep learnings, and charting your own unique course through life. In this show, we will be talking about the big questions about life, career, success, relationships, and re-looking at the challenges that we face and how we can transform those. I will be bringing on change makers that I admire and talking about the intimate side of their journey. How did they change their addictions, suicide, anxiety? How did they transform from all these experiences to show up as the people that they are today? The experience of inner transformation is not the same for everyone, but the impact it has will be with you for the rest of your life, metamorphosing you into a truer, more authentic version of yourself. Today we talk to Gaia Kodithuwakku, a woman I personally admire and a true shining example of inner transformation. Gaia went from being homeless, a drug addict, and suicidal depressive to not only transforming her life, but helping thousands of women all over the world transform their life and fall in love with their bodies. In this episode of the Inner Reset talk show, Gaia shares the intimate side of her story to give us a better look at how we too can learn from the challenges of today to create the unshakable inner strength she radiates. Enjoy. Let's just start chronologically with your childhood and what did that teach you, and then your journey to Australia and so on. So, how did your childhood shape you? Tell us.
I had an interesting childhood. Only child, only grandchild. I come from a super conventional family. So my environment was one of control. Everything was controlled from what I wore to who I spoke to. I had never taken public transport alone. I always had a guardian with me. I had never gone to a friend's birthday party. I had never gone anywhere alone, basically. Yeah. Wow. So even when later on when I went to Australia, I had a culture shock. I didn't know how to take public transport. I was completely impaired almost. I didn't know how to function. Also, I had a very toxic relationship with my mom growing up because she herself went through a lot of trauma unprocessed. So she directed a lot of that towards me. I got beaten up quite often. I got verbally abused and slut shamed when I was 6 years old, and I didn't know what slut shaming was all about. My grandparents, again, super conventional, had a lot of expectations on me. So I had a lot of academic pressure on me. Getting 90s for my, for maths or English wouldn't be all right. It should be 100. That was the standard that I had to sort of always, I was pressured to keep. In Sri Lanka, I don't know if you know, there's a scholarship examination in grade 5. So I came third in my school, but I remember when my grandma got to know my mark, she was so embarrassed. She told her friends a fake result. And I remember being just 10 or 11 years old, I felt so ashamed. And I carried that deep scarring for such a long time that I think in my mid-20s when I was in Australia, I wrote a 6-page letter to my grandma telling her about exactly how I felt throughout my entire childhood. But listen, they did the best they could with what they knew. They gave me the best life from what they knew. And also my dad wasn't around. My mom and dad had a really volatile, messed up relationship. So I saw that. So he was hardly in Sri Lanka. So I was constantly looking for, my childhood heroes were, I watched Rocky and Terminator, all these ultra masculine, protective male figures were my role models, growing up, I pretended to be them, or I pretended that they were my dads. I remember being a child, just fantasizing all these things, And so my childhood, although I didn't really understand there was anything wrong with it, because it was normal for me. Getting beaten up by my mom on a regular basis was normal to me. So I grew up an extremely angry child. I was just so angry all the time. I was really aggressive. So I would go back to school and beat up the kids who bully other kids. So I would beat up the bullies. Because I was looking for an outlet. And I was a chubby, I was a big kid compared to the kids in my grade. So me beating up boys were no problem. So whenever I see someone getting hurt, I would like superhero, I would go, so I channeled it that way. The thing is, we don't realize how much our formative years shape who we are. Up until the second lockdown, I didn't realize the anger I was holding on to, especially towards my mom and my grandparents. And during the second lockdown, I really processed the anger that I had, especially towards my mom. And I've shared with you this in detail also, that like that journey was amazing, because right now I have nothing but compassion towards my mom and we have a really good relationship. I love her. But that doesn't mean that she has changed as a person. She can still have she has deep victim mentality, my life is falling apart, my life is shit, I have nobody, I'm abandoned, these type of that mindset is still there. But what I can do as a daughter is just love on her. Right now I'm learning to not expect people around me to change, especially the older generation from our families, because they're really set in their ways. We had this conversation just 10 minutes ago, because when you're doing deep spiritual work and when you spend a lot of time in stillness, and when you come out of that bubble and when you face your family, relatives, whoever who are in that dense reality, you really see the contrast and you're like, oh shit, that's a bit much. So because that was my childhood, my constant effort was to do anything against whatever controlled me. I did everything they asked me not to. So don't date boys. The second I went to Australia, I dated 200 boys. I don't even know how many. Don't party. I did all the drugs in the world. I drank. I abused my body with substance. I did that. And up until very recently, I struggled with addiction. I mean, it first started with, I have this droopy eyebrow. It first started with drugs, then alcohol, then it moved on to weed. And then for me to get out of weed was such a struggle. Even when I was doing motivational talks and doing events, I was still quite high. It was part of my lifestyle. I had all kinds of justifications for it, The way I smoked weed was just not normal. It was morning till night every day from the time I was 19 till about 2 years ago or 1.5 years ago. It took me a while to get out of that. And I think what really helped me was again going in, just building that spiritual foundation. And then now, because I'm doing this whole 100 days of solitude, my other addictions are popping up. So now I'm noticing my addiction to consuming content. Netflix or YouTube or being on Instagram quite often. And then because I'm always in this spiritual realm where I'm still and meditating, and then I come out and I do this, I feel the density of it so much that I feel kind of gross by the end of the day. I feel slow and sluggish and just gross, and my mind is full of Paris Hilton's engagement ring and whatever is on the internet, everything just is right there, So right now, being very honest with you, this is my current struggle. So I really envy people who are not on social media. Who don't have to be on social media, because for me, my work is all social media. But if I could just take a really clean break, 1 month break, I would just love it.
Yeah. One big thing I've realized is just about this whole feeling of I'm not good enough. I feel like it starts when we are children, when when it's oh, you're a good girl if you do this, you're a bad girl if you do this, and especially with the marks, nothing is ever enough. And then and the other thing is also we are taught from childhood to seek validation from outside, and I feel that takes you to this whole journey of trying to be validated either through relationships. And
this is why I really admire the way you raise your daughter, because you let her, for an example, you if she wants to run, you let her run, and if she falls, you let her fall so she can learn from that experience. And this is something a lot of parents don't understand. And for me, they prevented me from doing everything, which basically made me do all the things they never wanted me to ever do.
So we know about your experience in Australia and, going there at 19 and feeling so insecure. Like even you said that, you didn't want to be called Sri Lankan because you felt like that was really ordinary. And another thing I've realized even when I was in uni, like if someone called me ordinary or if someone called anybody ordinary, it was the worst thing you could tell someone because we all just hate being ordinary. We all want to be special. And and so can you tell us a little more about that? Like, how did you go from, wanting to be all these different, like Mexican and did you say Eritrean? I don't even know what that country.
let me go into. I can't believe you remember the story. So I remember when I went to uni, I was the only Sri Lankan student in my class. I studied criminal justice administration. It was mostly Australian. There were 5 other international students. But I mean, my natural hair is super curly Afro-like hair. So I used to pass as a lot of things. So people would assume, are you Mexican? I would nod. Are you Eritrean, which is an East African nationality? I would say, yeah. They even took my name down for for the African Union in RMIT University, and I played a lot. and I came up with all these stories about how I'm mix of this and mix of that, but I was brought up in Sri Lanka, so I can kind of save myself. And I realized it's because I really had really shit self-esteem. One, it's because I grew up. My grandma is a former Miss Sri Lanka, so her beauty was always praised in the family amongst relatives, friends. Her friends would always come and say, "You're not as beautiful as your grandma." I mean, she's just stunning woman. And then you get my mother, who had major self-esteem issues. And I grew up looking at her always saying, I look ugly, right? Mama kehta hai ne, I look ugly, right? So that was, I saw these two extremes constantly. And right before I went to Australia, I got into this serious relationship, which was probably the most traumatic relationship of my life. This guy was definitely a narcissist. He was physically extremely violent with me. There were instances where he basically locked me up in a room for days. He would slide food through the door. I would not see daylight for days. And I was controlled in every way possible. And he also convinced my parents, because that's what they do. They're highly manipulative. They convinced my family that I was losing my mind and I was out of control in Australia, when all I wanted to do when I went there was study, because I was really into my, my academics. And, So while I spent that year with him completely controlled. It's crazy because I was trying to get away from my parents, to get away from their control. And you attract the patterns that you know. So I attracted the man who was even worse. So he would always look at me and say things like, you look like a man. Your legs are too fat, so you should never wear anything short. So I would be lying on bed and he would say, I'm lying on bed like this. And he would look at me saying, sometimes I feel like I'm with a man. And it was this constant thing that he would tell me. And then this really damaged my self-confidence and my self-esteem for years. And from that space, I went to uni. And when I started getting attention from people, I didn't know how to, I didn't know who I was to be myself. They say, be yourself. I didn't know who I was. So whoever they would assume I was, I would go along with it. So I would wear contact lenses. But I would pretend that they're my real eye color. And I remember I was working for this place called David Jones, and this really handsome Australian man used to come, and he would talk to me and he would compliment me on my eyes, and I would be like, yes, they're my real eyes. And this one day my contact fell off and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm screwed. My identity is revealed. And then I found it somewhere inside my eye, so I was fine. But I played all these roles, and I drew up all these stories, and I pretended and I lied just because I was so freaking empty inside, So, yeah. And
so then how did that change happen? Because I think for most people it's how do I change, like when your thinking pattern has always been a certain way, was it like a gradual change? Was it that something suddenly happened which made you start thinking differently about yourself?
I feel like for me, I'm a bit of a slow learner, to be honest, because I know people who sometimes like learn something from life and they just make this massive turnaround, which hasn't been the case for me. Like, I mean, I always knew, for an example, that smoking that much weed really like stifled my growth. I knew it was not good for me, but I just couldn't stop it. It was a gradual process for me, but it all happened because I was so completely afraid of failing. I still didn't know like what it meant to be successful, but I knew ever since I was a child, I had this deep sense of purpose. I knew I was meant to do something. So when I got into my 20s and I was clueless and I was really damaged and I didn't know what I was doing with my life, I was kind of pushed into deeper pain. And pain, even right now, is like my superpower and my weapon. Pain is what, I mean, I would love to learn from other things, but whenever something painful happens, I know there's something amazing that's going to come out of it. And right now, because of that reason, I don't suffer because of pain anymore. At least not as much as I used to. Like when my adopted brother passed away, the pain was so terrible that for 3 months, all I did was drugs for 3 months and just drinking alcohol. I didn't know how to like deal with it. But as I kept experiencing loss after loss after loss, especially, I know it sounds really strange, but like recently when I lost my cat, that was that last turning point for me that really showed me that nothing is evil or painful, that everything in fact is love. Even the most painful experiences are brought into your life with love so that you can catapult from that deep pain into something wonderful and just brilliant. And I think pain is what transformed me over time, because I was trying to get away from it. I was trying to learn from it. I was trying to see how I can alchemize it.
And you did alchemize your pain to your power, right? Another quote of yours was, I was confused and suffered chronic depression for nearly 8 years, and I think who I have become today is a result of trying to constantly figure out who I am and what I am here to do. It's all to do with self-awareness and constant trial and error. And so I wanted to like dig into that a little bit more. Like, you know, we are always taught that, oh, be like this, or this is success and run after this. But I think what's really unique and really interesting about your story is how you paved your own way, and it was through like trying to figure out who you are. So that's something I wanted to ask you next about, like how did you figure out like what it is that you wanted to do?
Man, I feel like when we stop trying and when we surrender is when, like, at least for me, that's when the best things have, that's when I discovered my passion to my career, to this whole fitness thing, which is my current vehicle of like serving and making money and everything. So for me, it was not, a lot of people ask me, so what was like your strategy and your plan? Like, how did everything I didn't have any plan. I didn't know anything about business. All I knew was, so I studied criminal justice. I came to Sri Lanka. I worked in media for 5 years. I loved expressing myself, but I couldn't express myself fully because there are restrictions when you're on radio or on TV. Although I knew speaking and expressing myself was a huge part of what I wanted to do, there's something off with that. And at the same time, the other one thing that kept me sane and kept me going was movement. So in Australia, when I went through that massively dark time period, I also like got raped when I was in Australia. So basically, depression is basically unexpressed pain or lack of expression. So when I started moving, I realized that as my body was getting stronger, my mind was getting stronger, the way I held myself changed, my perception changed, the way I looked at myself changed. I started respecting myself more because I was more disciplined, I was accountable. Because before that, I was all over the place. I didn't know how to pay my bills. I kept getting fired from jobs. I lied. I had no integrity. like I was just all over the place. So I had no respect for myself. And after being with that man who constantly shamed me and called me a slut, I started believing those things. So I myself call myself a slut. You know what I mean? When I started moving, though, everything changed. I felt like whatever was stored and just was deep inside me somehow kind of got released. And whenever I would train at gym, people would, like, especially women, would approach me and ask me, like, do you train? Can you train me? Are you a coach? And then my bosses would say, like, every time I walk into the studio, you're watching some deadlift video, like, can you just can you do your job properly? And then I remember my last workplace, they were like, you know what, they were great to me. But I remember I took a taxi one day, I went to my workplace. Right before I was about to get off, I felt so sick in my stomach, I knew I couldn't do it anymore. Like, I just couldn't physically go there. So I came back with no savings, no backup plan. I quit and I started doing fitness full time. So I started with personal training, one-on-one coaching. And I feel like I always could read a woman's body. Beyond the body, I feel like I can read the emotions and the stuff that you're holding on to, the emotional stuff behind why you do certain things. I felt like I could read these things about women. So personal training became amazing. I made, like, really good money. I would train 5 clients a day, but then it came to a point where I was doing it for the money. But then I realized, if I want to fuel my passion and if I want to serve more, and be able to have time to create content and keep doing this, I'm going to switch to online coaching. And online coaching was not available then. When I started in Sri Lanka, it was not a thing. So I was one of the few people who started it. And then it turned out to be the best decision ever.
So you almost had an intuition almost about it, like something made you think about online coaching as even an option when it wasn't an option in Sri Lanka.
I think it was my ability to take risks. I think a lot of people stick to familiarity so much because of the fear of failure. I have failed multiple times, but I feel like every failure taught me, and it was definitely worth it. And I think it's our rigidness that stops us from trying things out, Yeah.
No, totally. I think the fear of failure is so huge. But I think also when you fail, you realize that it's never as bad as you thought it would be.
Absolutely.
Right?
I mean, I have been broke to a point where, like, I especially in Australia, my God, like, there were days that I would go for days without food. But this is when I used to be a smoker. So I used to eat super unhealthy. So I think a McDonald's burger was around $2.50. So I had to pick between a McDonald's burger, or I buy. So these Asian shops used to sell $6 cigarette packets, like the cheap, like, even, like, really bad for your health, worse than the normal cigarettes. So I had to pick between smokes or a couple of burgers, and I would always pick the smokes because the smokes kept my hunger at bay. And I would go on for days like this, and it came to a point where I was like, okay, how do I survive? So I became like this really dodgy, like, I would steal food, and I had, like, a pack of friends who were just, like, absolute just, like, stealing, going into stores, stealing. I've done all of that. So I've gone through some really, I wouldn't even call them tough times, because when I was in them, it wasn't as, like you said, it wasn't as bad as you think they would be when you're in a different space. It's kind of normal when you're in it. You know what I mean? And you find the courage and the endurance to deal with it.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about that. So, like, I think even for me, I think when I was 15 and I was actually kicked out of my house and I didn't know where I would stay, or, how would I pay my uni fees and all, it was probably the lowest point of my life. But I always look back at that moment with pride, because at that point there was this strength that I found inside me that I can do this. I knew I was doing the right thing, and I was like, I can do this, like, even if I have to start working tomorrow, I have to quit my studies, whatever the hell I have to do, I can do this. And I feel like that strength, I would have never known that I had that strength or had the ability to live through that experience if I hadn't actually gone through it. And because I went through it, I could take so many more risks in my life because I was like, hey, I was strong then, I'm sure, like with all this education and all this like other stuff that I have now, I should be fine.
I think it's essential that everyone goes through experiences like this. So especially when I talk about the incident where I got raped in Australia, whenever I speak about this in like open like events, I see people kind of getting a little bit like, oh, did she say that? Because for me, I'm very comfortable talking about it. I wouldn't have it any other way. Like if I had to go back and choose a different experience, I still wouldn't, because that experience helped me relate to so many women who had gone through sexual abuse. Every situation, regardless of how dark it is, even like my brother's passing, all of these things teach us such an incredible deal. So
these days with, everything around COVID, there's so much fear constantly being bombarded into us. And, your story and how you've learned even from death is an example that, hey, no matter what happens, you can still evolve from it. You can evolve from everything life throws at you, whatever it is. For me, when I realized, about like just going in and the importance of going in and my spiritual path, like that is the biggest blessing. So yes, it had to come through pain, because otherwise, I won't even look there. Another really, really interesting thing that I wanted to go back to was depression. You said depression is when you numb your emotions, right? Was that like...
Yeah, it could be basically not feeling your feelings. It basically means that you're not processing what's coming up. So you're depressing it.
And that is so interesting, because I feel like in the world we are in today, I don't even think we know sometimes what we are feeling, because every time you feel discomfort, you're onto a phone or you're on a Netflix show until like something happens and then all the bricks kind of fall down on you. Yeah, so how can you, as someone who hasn't really felt their emotions or is very new to this whole thing of how do I feel, like what do I feel, how do I process my emotions, what would the advice be that you would give to them?
Don't you think it's so strange, the fact that being humans, we don't know how to feel, and feeling and emotion is such a massive part of who we are. It's like our internal guidance system. Like emotions tell us when we are or when we are not in alignment. And I think especially as a society, especially, living in a third world country, we are constantly conditioned to suppress it. Like for an example, I'll give an example. I have an aunt who went through mental health issues. Her daughter is dating this very sweet boy who has depression and on and off goes through suicidal depression. So when her daughter was trying to talk to her about the mental health of her boyfriend, she couldn't understand. She's like, what do you mean mental health? What do you mean depression? And I had to have a conversation with her and say, listen, you went through something. Do you remember that you went through something? Yeah, but I went through it because of this. What is he going through? Especially Sri Lankans from like that older generation find it really like weird to even talk about it. Like I still can't. I mean, I speak to everyone about this, but my own family can't tolerate the fact that I speak about these stuff. Even though our generation, we are comfortable enough to speak about it, there's still conditioning that comes through our parents' generation. We are conditioned to not fully feel our emotions. I didn't know how to feel my emotions until I got into stillness and deep meditation. I really didn't, because that's when I really knew how to really get into the middle of that emotion, get into the eye of the storm and really witness it. Because feeling an emotion and thinking about the emotion are totally two different things. Because emotions are physiological, and these physiological responses only last for about 80 seconds. But usually they last for much longer because we are too busy going into the head trying to figure this out. What I do is whenever I feel like a heightened emotion, I quickly get really deep into it and I just I really watch it. Usually most of my emotions, I feel it as a tightness in my chest or in my chest. So I really go to that area of my body and I really go deep into that feeling. And I really feel it. And when I really feel it, it disappears. So what does it mean? It's not even real. It's not even real. So, and I love the fact, I can't remember who on earth said this, but what is truth is something that stays consistent, that's something that doesn't change. What is illusion is something that keeps changing. So emotions, thoughts, or mind states, they all change so much. So they aren't even real. So if we just learn to feel our emotions, these responses, we won't be a slave to them. And that is what Vidarshana or Vipassana in Buddhist meditation is all about. It's literally just watching and being really open to what is coming up in each moment. Fucking simple.
And I think the other thing people struggle with, and I've seen this a lot, is like actually confronting people, like, or just talking to people about their emotions. So if something feels uncomfortable, we don't know how to confront people or even express what we feel in a less confrontational way. So it's always like pushing down. And I just wanted to know, like in your close relationships, how do you deal with these hard conversations, or even with your mom, like, or did you not tell her about?
I actually learned a whole deal about this from you, because I know you're very direct and blunt. Like even with family members, you're like, pff. And for me, I wanted to confront my mom because I was like, why? I was just a kid. I was a child. Why did you call me all these names? And why do you slut shame me? And why do you beat me up? And at 34, or actually at 33, a couple of months ago, during the second lockdown, I confronted her. But she didn't. She said that I made it all up because she can't face the stuff that she herself did to me. You know, because she came through such a deeply wounded place. So she went through so much abandonment in her life. Her dad died. Then her mother gave her away to her grandmother. And there she got super abused. So she always had this abandonment thing. My mom left me. So when she got married to my dad, she was always like, he's going to leave me. And that paranoia drew him away. So, and then all she had was me. She channeled all that that trauma onto me. And so when I asked her, she said, you're making this up. And then she said, you're crazy. So that was when I realized what gaslighting was really. Is that what you call it? Gaslighting? Gaslighting was really bad. And I was like, what? And I lost my mind. I went crazy. I was like, what? Are you telling me that I made this shit up? Like, this traumatized me. My entire childhood was shit because of this. And I lost my mind. And I was angry and I was fuming, so much fucking anger. And that's when I learned how to feel my feelings. This is when I discovered it for the first time. Although I've heard people talk about it and Vidarshana, but this is when I really like, you know what, I'm going to fucking feel this shit. Every time I worked out, the songs I listened to, every moment I lived in that anger, and it just passed through. And I learned how to forgive her because I saw, my gosh, this woman, her entire life has been nothing but pain. Her family caused her pain. Her husband left her and caused her pain. And pain is all she knows.
I think it's such a deep thing when you can actually look beyond what a person has done to you and just look at them as a human being on their own, going through like all the shit that life has thrown at them. So I love this quote you had on social media, contentment without the content. And like now you're someone who like has made such a dramatic shift in their life. Like you have the perfect partner, you have a thriving business doing what you love, which also gives you the independence. So is there a gap that needed to be filled when you had a lot of these other things? So why is spirituality important when you have everything you would want?
I think I wanted everything else because I wanted to fill up a spiritual vacancy. You know, I was looking for God in drugs, in sex, in alcohol, in partners. I was looking for this divine energy, this connection with the divine. And I remember as a joke, whenever I used to get like high on drugs, I would tell people, because a lot of people, like for an example, when people are on substance, they get like physically aroused. For me, it was not. For me, it was like rolling on the grass and looking at the stars and say, oh my God, this world is so beautiful. I was always on that trip. And even as a joke, I used to say, I'm just looking for God, even when I'm high. And I realized that I was trying to fill up this spiritual vacancy. And for me, I had no one to look up to. I had no reference. Like I didn't know what I was looking for. All I knew was when I was in Australia, I was looking for something. I was looking for a sense of purpose. I knew there was something deeper. But whenever especially in Australia, when I went through life or death situations, which I went through a couple of times, there was a divine intervention. I was saved like within a matter of seconds of me dying, me getting stabbed. So, and I actually, I remember this one day I was feeling particularly like deeply suicidal, and I was taking the train and I was walking through the carriages, and I kept asking myself, like, why am I here? I just want to die. Like, what's the point? Why am I here? I kept asking this question, and I saw this postcard which was upside down on a seat. And I have this journal with me right now. I was reading through it today, and this is what the postcard said. It basically says there must be a reason why I'm here.
That sent chills all up my hands. Wow.
Yeah. So this was like this postcard is from years ago, and I held on to it because I felt that there's something way bigger than me, pushing me forward. So I owe it to that energy to hold on and just, and follow and just let that energy lead me to wherever it takes me. So I always say, like, back in the day, I used to be very attached to the money I was making because I had a history of not having enough. And now I always say it's not my money, it's God's money.
In having the successful business, was there something that changed in your relationship with money again, or was it gradual? Like how did that whole thing happen? I mean, like that holds people back.
It absolutely changed. For me, money is not a dirty word. For me, money is amazing. Money gives you opportunities. Money gives you the capacity to help, to serve. I'm the only child and the only grandchild, so I fund 5 families in my, my immediate family and my distant families, and I do it with so much pride. And I know it's because money comes easy. Because we are taught that money does not come easy, and these patterns are so ingrained in our system that we believe it. Hence, money does not come easy to us. And also, kind of touching back onto what you were talking about when it comes to like spirituality and money, I had people who messaged me back in the day when I first started off, saying things like, why are you charging this much money? And I said, because energy is equivalent to money. So people would always question me, like, why? And then back in the day when I first started, I used to be really bad at talking money. Like, this is my charge. This is the reciprocation that, for what I provide. And I used to always shy away from it. But then I realized the damage it was doing to me. So I went against the discomfort, and I always spoke directly about it. This is my worth. This is what I put in. This is blah, blah, blah. So I think it's very important. I think these patterns are things that we need to really, they don't just dissolve. You need to put a little bit of effort, because there's so much momentum that has collected over time with these belief systems. My first job, I was making around 25,000 rupees. And out of that, I gave 15,000 to my mother. So I had to live off 10,000 rupees for the entire month. And I still partied though.
So that was all the party money.
So what I'm saying is, I'm not saying to party. I don't party anymore. But what I'm saying is that I didn't hold on to it. I didn't hold on to it to money with my dear life. Oh my God, like, I'm gonna die if I let this go. I was kind of, I was not too serious about it.
So then you said that, you need to kind of look into these patterns and then work through them. So how do you work through them? So I guess a lot of people would realize that they have those negative beliefs around money. So how do you make that conscious shift to actually change your relationship with money?
So first thing is the fact that you are conscious of it, because most people aren't conscious of it. Being conscious of the fact that maybe I think money comes hard. Maybe I think that only a few in the world gets to experience the finer things in life, luxury or comfort. Like, the fact that you're conscious of it is step number 1. It's a huge deal. Second, the second step is, whenever you act through those belief systems, to be aware of it. And the more aware you are, the third step is take actions to slow that momentum down. So like stating your worth or talking about money openly, and stuff like that. So like for an example, my assistant lent money to like a family member, and every day I'm like, ask for the damn money back. It's not like if you have millions in your bank, you're a student, ask for the damn money back. So it's basically going against that discomfort and really speaking up for yourself.
And so the next thing I wanted to ask was, so recently you've been talking about spirituality, God, surrender to God. And I think we touched upon it a little bit, but how would you define spirituality? Because even that is a word which sometimes throws people off a bit.
For me, spirituality is my connection to the divine or the source. For me, when that connection is gone, I feel lost. I don't even know who I am. Especially through meditation and stillness, when you slow down the noise and when you empty yourself, everything comes to you. Ideas, work-related stuff. You don't have to like go out of your way to come up with shit. Like, and the stuff that flows through are really like next level, incredible stuff. You know, so for me it has been less effort because of the fact that I've stayed empty as much as possible. So spirituality for me is this love affair, as you know, with the divine.
Yeah, and I think that is such an important message for young people to understand, because we are constantly like taught about the hustle mentality, working 14 hours a day. Elon Musk, I think, sleeps 4 hours a day, and like everyone's like, okay, that's the way to be.
But what I'm saying is this whole hustle mentality, grind, work hard, it's such a trend on social media that people don't get to see the other side of it, and the other side is so different. That side is so masculine, that's so action driven. This side is you're centered, you're still, and everything comes to you. You don't have to go behind anything, you know?
Yeah, so we started a little bit with this one, and it was relationships, like, and also as someone who's been in very toxic relationships to now having a very beautiful relationship. Like, how did that happen? Because like you said, you can't change people who are outside of you. But yeah, how do you...
Like super grateful to have the partner that I have right now. But even that was something that we had to work on. Especially the second and the third year, our relationship was quite tough. That's when a lot of our stuff came up, like, his unprocessed stuff, my stuff, and I just like, especially my stuff. and then we had to work through a lot of it. But I think one way you can identify if a partner is right for you is if you evolve. Like, I remember being with the person I was with before him. It messed up my my career, my training. I went on a downward spiral. But when I met Johan, everything changed because he held space for me to grow, and he didn't try to change me. He didn't try to. He was so different. He completely let me be myself. And that really helped me like blossom into and evolve into who I am today, and that keeps unfolding, unraveling. And I always tell you about how grateful I am to have him, and he's a grown man with a child stuck within him. His inner child is active and constantly just playing around, and that really, the best part about the relationship is how much he makes me laugh, to be really honest with you. And I'm just constantly just laughing and cracking up. And compared to the other partners that I've been with, he was never intimidated by my growth and my drive. When he met me, I was one of those hustle hard and grind type of girls. But he was never intimidated by that. He was advised, his boss, his extended family, everyone advised him against being with me because I was career driven and I was a certain way. And But yeah, he stuck through, and it's been absolutely amazing. He treats my family better than I do, to be honest, because I can be quite like dismissive, especially like if I hear old patterns repeating, I walk away. Whereas he would accommodate and hold space and comfort them and spend time with them, and he's just a blessing. But my advice to women listening is don't settle for just some random, just because I've been in those shoes where I felt like desperate, or I'm lonely, so I'm gonna date somebody. And when you go into a relationship from that space, it's just such a disaster. Such a fucking disaster. Like, I've really experienced how horrible it is. Whereas when I met Johan, I was in such an empowered state. Right before I met him, a couple of months before I met him, I put a ring on my finger and I said, I'm engaged. I'm married to myself. And I was just so in love with myself during that point. And I was like, whoever I date, whoever I become intimate with, it's purely for my pleasure and my happiness. And it's not to find validation through a relationship. And I was not even looking for a relationship. I was so fulfilled. And that's when he came into my life. And that space is the best space to be if you want a partner. Yeah.
Awesome. So I think that brings us to the end of the podcast. Thank you so much, Gaia. This has been so much fun. And the minute I decided to do this podcast, you were the first person I wanted to bring on, because I was like, there's just so much learning, and the way you express, and like you just make it real. It's not like this vague spiritual, like what do they say? Like fluffy or like touchy-feely.
Airy fairy, yeah.
Airy fairy, yeah. Not real thing. Like, you really just bring it down to earth for us, and have made this accessible and understandable to so many thousands of people. So grateful for that, and keep doing your amazing work. I'm so grateful to have you as a friend and a teacher.
Thank you so much. I love you.
Thank you. And so I wanted to end with a poem, which I think Gaia probably knows, but I heard this recently. And once I said to God, "How did you teach us? How do you teach us?" And he replied, "If you were playing chess with someone who has infinite power and infinite knowledge and wanted to make you a master of the game, where would all the chess pieces be at every moment? Indeed, not only where he wanted them, but where all were best for your development. And that is every situation of one's life." So that's something to take away, apart from all the amazing insights that Gaia has shared. And yeah, look forward to seeing you for the next session. Thank you. The Inner Reset is brought to you by HomeTree Coworking, a co-working space I co-founded. HomeTree is Sri Lanka's first co-working space dedicated to mindfulness at work. At HomeTree, we aim to reinvent the way we work in the post-pandemic world by focusing on consciousness, community, and co-creation in the new normal. We're trying out a range of ways to bring mindfulness into how we work. One of them is through online deep work sprints, where we combine mindfulness techniques with productivity science to help us get better at what we do and to help us do our best work. HomeTree is located in the heart of Colombo. It has a range of private offices plus individual workspaces to suit all your different needs. It is adorned by inspiring art, by local artists, and nature-based themes in the floors to help you get your best work done. More importantly, HomeTree is an ever-growing community of creatives, entrepreneurs, and change makers who support each other in co-creating their wildest dreams. At HomeTree, we take pride in aspiring towards a new world of work, where your inner being directs what you do in the outer world. To find out about our latest programs, you can go to our Instagram page.